the government is committing an extra £100 million to help smash those smuggling gangs they haven't managed to smash thus far. Now, the additional funding will go towards the so-called one-in, one-out return scheme with France. But in the meantime, protests show no sign of slowing down as demonstrators continue to gather outside hotels housing asylum seekers. And this included outside the Britannia International Hotel in Canary Wharf, as you can see on your screens now, this weekend, where women and children were dressed in pink and they protested peacefully before masked rioters stormed the demonstration and clashed with police. And indeed, more protests are planned throughout the rest of this week. Here to discuss this in the studio with me, I'm delighted to be joined by GBNews' political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, welcome back to the studio. Let's start with these protests, if we can. A year ago, the Prime Minister called them far right. Many believe that was a spectacular error of judgment. The protests continue to mount as the problems driving them continue to surface. Allegations of sex offences in areas they aren't going anywhere anytime soon, and it looks set they're going to increase.
It does look that way because we're seeing this again and again, as you've just alluded to. We've had these crimes allegedly committed by asylum seekers very recently, young girls of 12 or 14 years old, and sometimes in broad daylight. So I think it is significant now. You are increasingly seeing women dressed in pink, mothers. I was at a press conference with Nigel Farage of Reform a little bit earlier. They were talking a lot about this, and he said to me that there's grave concerns, particularly amongst mothers, about basically letting their young daughters, teenage daughters out and whether they are safe. And for all that the government are announcing initiatives left, right and centre on what they're doing to smash the gangs, it does feel to many like we swapped one 3-word slogan, which was stop the boats under Rishi Sunak, for smash the gangs under Starmer. You know, they're constantly announcing different initiatives, but the numbers are up. Crossing the Channel, 25,000 this year. That's up 50% on this time last year. They're going completely in the wrong direction. And Nigel Farage saying, we are done, we have had enough. Now, of course, it's easy when you're not in power to make pledges, but Reform are saying that what normal countries do is detain people and deport them. And he's basically said today that those that come across the Channel should not be free to walk the streets. They should be detained and deported. He told me that their plans for how they will do this, they will lay out later in the summer. But it does sound like a very radical approach and something that for all the government's efforts, they are just not getting a grip of this at all at the moment.
Hey, Catherine Forster, excellent. Please stick with me. I'd like to join my next guest now. I'm delighted to say we speak with a mum of 3 and a local resident of Bognor Regis, Carly Cameron. Carly, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. I wanted to ask you, what's motivated you to take to the streets in your area to protest about asylum hotels?
Just watching the daily increase of all the boats come in, all the illegal immigrants, hearing of the stabbings, the rapings of all these poor little children. I've also had dealings with social services and the police myself, and I'm finding that all services are really, really under pressure. It feels like Keir Starmer is doing nothing but encouraging these people to come here, offering them more and more benefits while we receive less and less and we struggle to live and afford daily life. That everyone needs to be getting out there and making their point across. There is protests and rallies going on weekly at the moment, and people do need to be taken to the streets and getting your flags out and making an effort now.
Now, Carly Cameron, of course, I have to add that these offences at the moment are alleged, and of course not everybody coming to the country wishes harm upon Brits. We need to have that bit of balance. And I know you agree with that, but I wanted to ask you specifically, we saw at Canary Wharf yesterday, we've seen at other protests, counter-protesters coming in and calling people like yourself far-right, racist, fascist, Nazi scum off our streets, we were hearing in London at the weekend. How does it feel as a mother of three who's concerned about safety of children to be branded such horrible things?
It is really insulting and degrading, and you hear it so often now. People actually are not educating themselves on the situation, and they're just choosing a side and jumping on the bandwagon. And people really do need to get out there, educate themselves more, and get a lot more knowledge on what's going on. It's escalating daily.
And do you feel that the police are responding in a way with equity? We hear all the time about two-tier policing. Do you feel that that's the case, or in your experience, have the police been fair?
No, I do feel there's a lot of two-tier policing from what I've witnessed. I've been quite involved over the last year or so. They're very fair on protests and rallies, and they try to be, but they are also lacking a lot of power themselves to be able to do anything. I feel that the police are also being pressured by Keir Starmer introducing all these new rules as he does on a daily basis.
Have you had a random call lately from a strange number, maybe trying to sell you something or even scam you? If so, your info could be out there. That's because of data brokers, shady companies that scrape the internet for your personal details and sell them to marketers or even scammers. These days, scammers can even use AI to mimic your friends' voices and trick you into sending money. It's not just annoying. Data brokers often target vulnerable people with high-interest loans or sketchy offers. But there is a solution. Incogni, the sponsor of this video. Incogni contacts data brokers on your behalf and requests your info be deleted from their databases. And because your data can keep popping up, Incogni keeps sending removal requests to make sure it stays gone. They've just launched a new unlimited plan with custom removals. If you find your info on a weird website, just send them the link and their privacy team will work to get it taken down. Getting started is easy. Hit the link in the description, create your account and let Incogni handle the rest. It's risk-free for 30 days and you'll get 60% off an annual plan with the code GBNews. Take back control of your data with Incogni.
OK, I'd like to show you a clip now, if I could, Carly. This was sent to a friend of mine. He's a military veteran, 30 years service. This was at the Barbican at the weekend. Some far-left agitators were brought in and shouted Nazi scum off our streets to a veteran. Let's watch that now. Now, Carly, I wanted to ask you for your reaction to that, because we hear all the time, don't we, that the problem here is the far right. Do you think we have a problem with the far left? They're brought in to specifically perhaps agitate people like yourselves.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree with that. They are paid to come in and agitate everyone. And they just want attention. They just want attention taken off what we're trying to actually do and put it on them and their sick views and ways, and it's completely wrong.
Carly, do you think we're at the time now where we should be asking people to remove all their face coverings at protests? I mean, the law exists to enforce that, but never seems to be enforced.
Yeah, there should be no face coverings. Every protest I attend, we always encourage no face masks, no head wearing masks, because you don't need to be hiding yourself. If you're doing something right, you shouldn't need to hide.
Can I ask you about the political reaction to all of this? We've seen successive governments in many ways frozen in the headlights of the backlash. They just don't seem to understand how communities such as yourself in Bognor or all over the nation is reacting to this. Carly, Cameron, do you think that's because the political class don't live in areas where hotels are? They don't live in areas where HMOs are dumped upon them. They're on a different planet.
I don't even think it's that they don't live among us. I think they choose to ignore us. Oh, am I still there? Sorry.
Yes, you are.
They choose to ignore us. Sorry, they choose to ignore us, and that's completely put me off. Sorry. Could we just go over the question again?
Yeah, of course. I wanted to ask you if you feel that there's a sense of political detachment from the political class.
Yes,
they don't have hotels or HMOs in their area.
Yeah, it's not that they don't live among us. They choose to ignore it, and they have an agenda that they're working to, and that's what they're going to continue to do.
OK, thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us, Cardi Cameron, mum of 3 and a local resident, a protester there in Bognor Regis. Catherine Forster, I want to come back to you in the studio. There we have it. You know, an ordinary mum who's just concerned about safety in her community, being called every name under the sun. I wonder, I put it to you again, I wonder if the political class in this country has completely misread the public on this.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? And I remember a couple of months ago asking the Prime Minister, are you failing to keep us safe in the English Channel? Because we don't know who all these people are coming across on the boats. Now, of course, most of them just wanting to make a better life for themselves. But there will be some people who are bad actors and have ill intent towards us. And, Nigel Farage, again, at this press conference, talking about that and the fact that if you make it here, you're effectively rewarded because you probably get to stay. You'll be put up in a hotel, you'll be given board. And I thought it was interesting hearing that mum talking about people struggling. And, she was saying, we are struggling to make ends meet. And you see these people just being sort of handed everything. And I was struck by something that Angela Eagle, the Borders Minister, said this morning on TV. She said, anger doesn't get you anywhere. Well, of course it doesn't. And there is no excuse for violence. But many people do feel angry because they've put politicians in charge who have said they will sort this problem out, and it isn't being sorted out. Is it any wonder that people are so frustrated?
I was in Sunderland on Friday, Catherine, and what really blew me away about the people there is that time and time again they told me that they'd voted Labour forever. Their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers, since the dawn of time, Labour areas, and they were feeling very, very disconnected from all of the political class because they live in those areas where houses and multiple occupancy are foisted upon them without ever any consultation, without ever having a say. They find that there are 13-month waiting lists for social housing in those communities. The city is a city of sanctuary, which sounds great on paper. When you have 9,500 people waiting for a house locally, they feel disconnected. They feel rejected. And when they speak up and they're then called far right and they're told by people like Angela Eagle, oh, don't be angry about it. Well, how are they meant to react?
Yes, and when I went up for the by-election in Runcorn, that, of course, Reform won by Sarah Pochin by a whisker, the hotel I was staying in had lots of families staying in there. You heard them running up and down the corridors. There were signs on the mirrors saying, do not cook in this room. British families who haven't got housing being put up in hotel rooms, not great for children. The taxi driver was telling me he had a rental property and he was saying, look, I could rent it out on a long-term deal to asylum seekers. I'd get paid a lot of money for it, but he just didn't want to do that. So I think it is very real, this frustration, very understandable. And one of the things I heard in Runcorn were, again, lots of lifelong Labour voters up till that point. And some of them were saying, it feels like the Labour Party care about people that are overseas, but are not fussed about what's happening to British people, under their own noses.
Do you think part of the problem here, and I think it was the same with the Conservative Party, the Conservative Party was two parties, let's face it, on Brexit and perhaps on immigration and on net zero. And that is, on the one hand, they talk tough on controlling borders. On the other hand, they have, might call them, the more liberal-leaning Conservatives who don't agree with that. And the modern Labour Party also, we have the Red Wall, who know that they're gravely in peril of losing their seats unless they do something about this. And then you have a lot of other people on the Labour Party, leaning to the left, who actually seem quite happy with the way things are going. And that's a huge problem because they're not united in tackling the issue.
It is a huge problem, and also because the average majority now, I think, is half what it was in the previous general election. Labour have got dozens and dozens of seats where Reform are nipping at their heels with tiny, tiny majorities. And as you say, the Red Wall MPs are very well aware of what voters feel that they need and want to see. People like Mike Taptoo down in Dover at the sharp end of this. But there's others that have a quite different mindset. And it's very difficult for Labour because they need to deliver and quickly, because otherwise that majority is going to go up in smoke, isn't it?
Okay, Catherine Forster, thank you very, very much. Now we have a Home Office spokesperson who told GB News this. The government is reducing expensive hotel use as part of a complete overhaul of the asylum system. From over 400 asylum hotels open in the summer of 2023, costing almost £9 million a day, there are now less than 210, and we want them all closed by the end of this Parliament. And we continue to work closely with police and community partners across the country and discuss any concerns they have. The security of the local communities within which hotels are located will always be our first priority.